Laura here. Annabelle. Melissa. If you're there, please answer. I banged on the door loudly, but there was no response at all. Just as I was about to leave, thinking they might have gone out, I heard the sound of a key turning. When the door opened, there stood my granddaughter Melissa. She looked anxious, but her face lit up when she saw me. "Granny!" she exclaimed briefly and hugged me tightly. I picked up Melissa and went inside. The room was eerily quiet, and Annabelle was nowhere to be seen. "Melissa, did Annabelle go out somewhere?" Melissa just nodded in response to my question. As we moved further into the house and reached the living room, I noticed half-eaten snacks on the table. I put Melissa down and asked her again. "It's lunchtime, but you were eating snacks?" "Yeah. When Dad's not here, Santa Claus comes and brings me snacks." "Santa Claus? He comes on days when Dad's not here and brings lots of stuff. Mom looks so happy about it. But it's a secret from Dad. Because it would bother Santa Claus." Hearing this, I became certain of something. Annabelle's flashy outfit the other day was for meeting this Santa Claus. I immediately started to search the house for evidence. I am Laura. I work at a cafe near my home. I lost my husband about 20 years ago, and since then, I have been raising my son Nicholas on my own. Since my husband's passing, the regulars at the cafe have been looking out for me in various ways. With their support, Nicholas grew up well and became independent as a working adult. I shared this joy with all the regulars. A few years after Nicholas started working, he married a woman named Stephanie, and they had my granddaughter, Melissa. Lately, my greatest joy has been seeing Melissa. She seems to have taken a liking to me, which makes me incredibly happy. My hobby is knitting, and I make sweaters and hats, gifting them to her whenever I can. "Melissa, I knitted a sweater for you." Seeing the sweater I made, Stephanie also smiled warmly. "Thank you as always." "Melissa, make sure you thank her properly." "Thank you." She held the sweater I gave her dearly, humming a tune as she took it to her room. Watching her back, Stephanie and I talked about Melissa's future. Everything was supposed to be fulfilling. But misfortune strikes suddenly. Stephanie fell seriously ill. I took care of Melissa instead, praying fervently every day for Stephanie's recovery. Nicholas, too, was busy caring for Stephanie and comforting Melissa whenever he could. We believed Stephanie would recover. However, after years of fighting the illness, Stephanie passed away. But there was no time to grieve. We still had young Melissa. With Nicholas busy at work, I started to go to his house to take care of her. Seeing Stephanie's resemblance in my granddaughter's face, I vowed to do everything to make Melissa happy. A few years passed by. I was at Nicholas's house, cooking dinner for Melissa as usual. Nicholas returned from work with a serious look on his face. "Mom, I need to talk to you, just the two of us." He took Melissa to her room and returned alone after a while. I wondered what it was about. A bit anxious, I opened my mouth. "So, what's up?" Nicholas looked embarrassed. "Well, actually, I'm thinking of remarrying." "What?" I blurted out loudly. Then covered my mouth, worrying Melissa might hear. Nicholas continued seriously. "Sorry, I know it's shocking. I didn't intend to at first. But thinking of the future, I worry about Melissa being lonely." Indeed, Nicholas had a point. I'm taking care of her now, but there's no guarantee I can continue to do so. Melissa is still young, she might accept a new mother. "I understand. I'll support your decision. So, what's she like, the woman you're seeing?" Relieved, Nicholas smiled for the first time. "She's a junior at my company. She's been into me since she joined. She's really cheerful, I think Melissa will like her." "That's good to hear." "Actually, I'd like you to meet her before the wedding, if that's okay." "Of course." So the conversation progressed, and a few days later, I was set to meet Nicholas's fiancée. Her name is Annabelle, and just like Nicholas said, she was very cheerful. Throughout our conversation, her constant smile made me genuinely like her. When I first saw him at the company, I knew I liked him. I heard he lost his previous wife, but I didn't care and went for it. I aggressively pursued him. Anyway, she talked a lot. With her youthful appearance, she looked much younger than her age. I was worried about how Melissa would feel about Annabelle, but Melissa seemed to warm up to her quickly. Seeing Melissa so attached to Annabelle, I felt reassured that she would be all right. Annabelle, please take good care of them. I'm here to help if you need anything. I bowed as politely as I could, and Annabelle gave a thumbs up. Okay. Leave it to me. Afterward, Nicholas and Annabelle got married and started their new life. I wholeheartedly blessed their future and returned to my regular life. Working at the cafe, joking with the regulars, and knitting while watching TV at home. It was fulfilling, but I felt a bit lonely compared to the busyness of the past. At such times, I prayed in my heart to Stephanie. What would she say if she were alive? I thought about such things as I continued with my knitting. Several more years passed since their remarriage. One day, I went to give Melissa a sweater I had knitted, heading to the condominium where Nicholas and his family lived. Nicholas seemed busy with work lately, often away on business trips. With him not home often, I worried Annabelle might be overburdened with childcare. While delivering the sweater, I hoped to help Annabelle as well. Thinking about what to talk about with her, I headed to Nicholas's condominium. What floor was it again? Arriving at the condominium, I muttered to myself, standing in front of the elevator. Luckily, the elevator was just coming down. Third floor, second floor, as the lights blinked, and a sound indicated its arrival at the first floor. In contrast to the slowly opening doors, a woman hurried out. I glanced at her and was surprised to see that the woman was Annabelle. Oh! Annabelle! Startled by my voice, Annabelle let out a gasp and hopped a little. Laura? You startled me! What are you doing here? Sorry about that. I knitted a sweater for Melissa and thought I'd bring it over. Hearing this, Annabelle suddenly seemed unsettled. Her gaze wandered around, restlessly. I noticed that Annabelle was dressed very elegantly. Her outfit and makeup were perfect. Are you heading out? Bad timing on my part. Yes, I have a meeting with mom friends. So, Avoiding eye contact and fidgeting with the hand not holding her bag, Annabelle spoke. Annabelle seemed in a hurry. Regretting not contacting her in advance, I suggested. Don't worry about me, go ahead. Melissa is in her room, right? If I stay with her, you can relax and enjoy your time more. And so, I offered. Just wait a moment. I can't impose that on you, Laura. Don't worry about it. You probably need a break too. I'm just an old lady with too much time on her hands. However, she stubbornly refused my offer, and I felt something was off. Sure, I might have been overstepping. But was there a need for her to be so frantic? The truth is, my apartment's a mess. I'm embarrassed for you to see it. That's why I don't want you to come in. It's fine, really. I can help clean up. Finally, unable to hold back any longer, Annabelle snatched the bag with the sweater from my hand. I really can't have you here. I'll make sure Melissa gets the sweater. Please go home now. I'll contact you later. Then she pressed the elevator button. Even as Annabelle stepped in and the doors began to close, she kept a wary eye on me, making sure I wasn't following. As the doors closed slowly, I waved goodbye. Only silence remained. But my mind was anything but quiet. The season was about to turn to autumn, yet her attire was quite revealing. I also noticed a strong scent of perfume. I've met with mom friends myself, but never dressed so provocatively. Maybe times have changed, but Annabelle's attire seemed too intent on attracting the opposite sex. Moreover, the once bright smiling Annabelle didn't smile at all. Instead, she had a glaring look that concerned me. I wanted to chase after her, go to the apartment, and clear my doubts. But Melissa was there too. Not wanting to cause a commotion, I decided not to. I watched the elevator light ascend with a feeling of unease. With worries in my heart, I left the condominium quickly. That night, while knitting and watching TV, I suddenly got a call from Annabelle. I stopped my work and answered the phone. Hello. Hello. Granny. Melissa's innocent voice came through. Her voice instantly made me smile. Melissa. It's been a while. Have you been well? Yeah. And thanks for the sweater. I'll treasure it. Her words brought relief. Annabelle had indeed given it to her. That's all right, dear. If you ever need another, I'm always here to knit one for you. Really? That's so nice. Granny, you're like Santa Claus too. The phrase Granny, you're like Santa Claus too oddly struck me. As if there was someone else giving gifts besides me. Yes, indeed. You're such a good girl, Santa Claus must visit you a lot. I subtly tried to confirm the meaning of her words. Melissa. Don't say unnecessary things. I faintly heard Annabelle's angry voice from the background. Unaware that I could hear her, Annabelle continued scolding in a stern tone. You've already said thank you, right? Hang up now. Yes, okay. Sorry, Granny. I have to go now. Melissa's voice was trembling. More than being upset about being scolded, she seemed frightened by Annabelle's voice. Understood. Call me again later. With that, I ended the call and picked up my crochet hook again. The interaction between the two felt oddly strained for a mother and child. Due to a vague unease, I found it hard to continue knitting. Annabelle's flashy attire from the afternoon and Melissa's fearful voice from earlier. Could something troubling be happening? I knew I had to do something, but wasn't sure what. I sat motionless for a while, pondering my next move. That's it. Nicholas. I should talk to Nicholas. With his image in mind, I immediately grabbed my mobile phone and called Nicholas. He was on a business trip out of state, but it should be after work hours. Please, pick up. Luckily, Nicholas answered the phone right away. Hello. What's up, Mom? It's unusual for you to call at this time. I could hear a hint of tiredness in his voice. But I had no time to worry about that. Hello, Nicholas. Are you okay? I need to talk to you about something. I'm fine, but what's wrong? Did something happen? Sensing urgency in my voice, Nicholas's tone became serious. I told him about visiting the condominium with the sweater, encountering Annabelle in the elevator hall, and then about Melissa earlier. Nicholas listened quietly as I spoke. After I finished, he replied, I understand the situation. Indeed, it does sound concerning. He let out a deep sigh. That's what I thought. I can't stop thinking about it. While I was frantic, Nicholas seemed surprisingly calm. What should we do? What if something happens to Melissa? Just wait a moment, Mom. Panicking won't help. I think Annabelle is just stressed because I've been busy. We shouldn't make a fuss about it. Calmed by Nicholas's advice, I regained some composure. You're right. I'm sorry for jumping the gun. That's okay. But we can't just leave it at that. I'll talk to my company and try to cut my business trip short. We can go to the house together when I'm back. Indeed, it's better to act together rather than rushing in alone. I agreed with Nicholas's suggestion. Understood. Let me know when you've decided on a plan. Yeah. But keep this a secret from Annabelle, okay? Talk to you later. After hanging up, I let out a deep sigh. Nothing was resolved yet, and the unease hadn't disappeared. But hearing Nicholas's calm voice had indeed eased my mind a bit. Nicholas has really grown up. I need to stay strong too. Reminding myself of this, I waited for Nicholas's call with a shifted mindset. Soon after, Nicholas contacted me saying he could return earlier than planned. We arranged to visit the condominium together and hoped for the day to come quickly. All I could do was pray for Melissa's safety. "Stephanie, please protect that child. I beg of you." I continued to plead in my heart. Finally, the day arrived. Leaving my house earlier than planned, Nicholas was not yet there. After informing him I'd enter first, I took the elevator to the apartment. Reaching the door, my heart raced. I mentally rehearsed what to say to Annabelle and braced myself before ringing the doorbell. I rang once, twice, but there was no response from inside. Unable to wait, I knocked on the door. "Laura here. Annabelle. Melissa. If you're there, please answer." I banged on the door loudly, but there was no response at all. Just as I was about to leave, thinking they might have gone out, I heard the sound of a key turning. When the door opened, there stood Melissa. She looked anxious, but her face lit up when she saw me. "Granny!" she exclaimed briefly and hugged me tightly. I picked up Melissa and went inside. The room was eerily quiet, and Annabelle was nowhere to be seen. "Melissa, did Annabelle go out somewhere?" Melissa just nodded in response to my question. As we moved further into the house and reached the living room, I noticed half-eaten snacks on the table. I put Melissa down and asked her again. "It's lunchtime, but you were eating snacks?" "Yeah. When Dad's not here, Santa Claus comes and brings me snacks." I decided to ask Melissa about the doubt that had been on my mind since the other day. "Melissa, who is this Santa Claus?" While eating the snacks, Melissa shook her head. "I don't know. He comes on days when Dad's not here and brings lots of stuff. Mom looks so happy about it." "What does Mom say about him? Does she mention Santa Claus's name?" Melissa tilted her head in confusion. "I don't know. She always leaves with Santa Claus quickly. Only Mom comes back. So, Santa Claus visits often because you're a good girl. But Dad doesn't know, right?" "Yeah. Dad's never met Santa Claus. Mom says not to tell Dad because it would upset Santa Claus." Hearing this, I was convinced that Annabelle was entertaining an unknown man while Nicholas was away. Presumably, that's what she planned when I tried to deliver the sweater. That would explain Annabelle's behavior at that time. And Melissa, receiving sweets and toys, really is believing in Santa Claus. A cheap way to keep her quiet. That's when I noticed Melissa's clothes were dirty. "Melissa, stay here for a moment." I had a bad feeling. Looking around the house, my fears were confirmed. Dirty clothes scattered everywhere, unwashed dishes piled up in the kitchen. Carefully avoiding the mess, I opened the fridge. It was nearly empty, with only expired food inside. Shocked by the state of things, I returned to the living room. Melissa was gobbling up the sweets. "Melissa, are you hungry? Haven't you eaten?" "I'm hungry because I haven't ate. That's why I like eating the sweets Santa Claus gives me." I hugged Melissa tightly, gently stroking her head. It's too much for such a young child to endure. How could I face Stephanie in heaven now? As I loosened my embrace, Nicholas arrived. Entering the room and setting down his bag, he sighed as he looked around. "This is a mess." "Dad! Welcome back!" Melissa quickly left my side and hugged Nicholas. "Melissa, have you been a good girl?" Nicholas embraced her, gently stroking her head as I had. "Nicholas, can you watch Melissa? She hasn't eaten anything. I'm going to the supermarket to buy some groceries." "Understood. I appreciate it." I hurriedly left and bought essential groceries. Back home, I cleaned the kitchen and cooked a meal. Melissa ate hungrily. Meanwhile, Nicholas and I cleaned the room and secured evidence of Annabelle's infidelity. We discussed how to confront Annabelle with the truth. During our talk, Nicholas sensed Annabelle's return and retreated to the back room. "I'm home. You better have not done anything." Annabelle entered, noticing me, and dropped her bag.
Laura! What are you doing here?
She looked around the room and went to the kitchen. And then approached me angrily.
Unbelievable. You just come in and use the kitchen? That's outrageous even for you.
Annabelle's anger didn't seem to subside. And then she directed her anger at Melissa.
Melissa! You opened the door for her. Why do you always do such unnecessary things?
Melissa dropped her chopsticks to the floor and clung to Annabelle's legs, crying loudly. Mom, I'm sorry. I won't do anything bad again. Please forgive me. Annabelle, there's no need to speak like that. Melissa was waiting here hungry the whole time. Annabelle, her face twisted in anger, let out a heavy sigh.
I don't need to be lectured. Melissa is my child. Laura, please don't interfere.
I clenched my fists involuntarily. Yes, her words weren't wrong. But I couldn't overlook this situation for Melissa's sake.
But this is like neglecting a child.
I understand it's tough with Nicholas being busy. If that's the case, you should have asked me for help.
Enough. Just leave now. I'll ask Nicholas to have a word with you. There's no need for that.
Nicholas, unable to bear Annabelle's harsh words any longer, emerged from his hiding spot. Annabelle was surprised to see him. Nicholas, you're back already. That was quick. Was work all right? Annabelle desperately tried to cover up her actions. But it was too late for such efforts. Still, Annabelle seemed oblivious, continuing to speak sweetly to Nicholas. If you had told me you were coming back early, I would have cleaned up and prepared a feast. But those words no longer had any effect on me or Nicholas. Nicholas signaled me with his eyes. Understanding immediately, I took Melissa's hand.
Melissa, you're full now, right? Let's watch TV together.
I took Melissa to another room and turned on the TV. Although she was sobbing, she soon became engrossed in the TV.
Melissa, watch TV for a bit. I'm going to clean up. Okay.
Leaving my smiling granddaughter watching TV, I returned to the living room. Nicholas and Annabelle were seated facing each other at the dining table. Annabelle had changed completely from her earlier coyness, now sitting quietly, looking down. Nicholas sat with his arms crossed, staring intently at Annabelle. I sat down next to Nicholas. Taking that as a cue, Nicholas began to speak.
So, can you explain what all this is about?
Annabelle bit her lip, not answering.
Listen, Annabelle. I'm not trying to blame you. I share the responsibility, too. I was too busy with work to help with childcare.
Then Annabelle suddenly looked up and glared at Nicholas.
That's right. It's all your fault for dumping everything on me. You're never home, and Melissa is a handful. It was hard. So, you cheated on him.
I calmly responded to Annabelle's defiant attitude. In her panic, Annabelle started blurting out things we hadn't even asked.
I did love Nicholas, you know. Since I joined the company. I thought Stephanie's death was my chance, so I married him, but now I regret it.
She continued, taking advantage of our silence.
But look at Nicholas. He's gotten old. Look at that belly. It's embarrassing. I'm disillusioned. I'm still young and I want to have fun. Is that too much to ask?
I involuntarily glanced at Nicholas. But he didn't seem particularly angry.
I get what you're saying. So, who is your affair partner?
A friend from my student days, Hugo. We happened to meet recently. He's still wonderful, unlike you. After saying this, Annabelle looked up at the ceiling.
I shouldn't have married. Melissa is becoming more like Stephanie and is not cute at all. But Hugo likes kids, so she was useful in that matter.
Suddenly, Nicholas slammed his fist on the table. Both Annabelle and I were startled and tensed up. Nicholas glared at Annabelle with anger-filled eyes.
You think because I don't say anything, you can keep this up? I was going to forgive you, but you keep spouting nonsense. Annabelle seemed completely frightened by this side of Nicholas. I swallowed hard, impressed by his intensity. Mock me all you want, but I won't tolerate you talking about Melissa like that. It's over. We're getting a divorce. I'll be seeking alimony, too. Wait. Annabelle's complexion changed the moment she heard divorce. She realized she had said too much. I won't divorce. I'll apologize for overstepping. I regret what I did to Melissa, and I'll break up with Hugo. Please forgive me. No, we're separating. Even if I forgave you now, you'd just do it again. My mind is made up. I had never seen Nicholas with such a cold expression. Annabelle's anger flared up again at his unchanging decision. Stop it. You just admitted it's your fault. I won't allow a divorce. Hearing this, Nicholas slowly took out his mobile phone and placed it on the table. He operated the screen, and Annabelle's voice started playing. As soon as she heard it, she became silent and seemed to come to her senses. Her earlier statements echoed through the room. As you can hear, I recorded your voice. I have evidence of the state of the room and your affair. So, there's no chance of winning for you. Thus, Annabelle finally compromised and accepted the divorce. For the time being, I took custody of Melissa. It was decided because Nicholas was busy, and it was deemed unsafe to leave her with Annabelle. During the divorce mediation, I started taking Melissa to the cafe with permission. The regular customers were smitten with her and even helped look after her. When I explained the situation to them, one of them, a former detective, suggested filing a criminal complaint. With enough evidence, it would be possible, he advised. I immediately informed Nicholas, and we began preparations for a criminal case. Simultaneously, the divorce mediation also progressed smoothly. Thanks to the evidence we had secured in advance, Nicholas successfully gained custody. I am truly glad I consulted with Nicholas at that time. Regarding alimony, since Nicholas also had some fault, the amount wasn't significant. However, Annabelle couldn't afford it, so her parents agreed to pay on her behalf. Subsequently, Annabelle was arrested. Following the trial, she is now incarcerated. Melissa was anxious until the turmoil settled, but she quickly cheered up thanks to the regular customers and our emotional support. On my recommendation, Nicholas moved to a nearby neighborhood. He's still busy with work, so when he's on business trips, Melissa stays at my house. Our greatest joy is doing knitting together and watching TV. Melissa increasingly resembles Stephanie. Seeing Stephanie's reflection in Melissa's smile, we are all living a happy life. A year ago, we surely pledged our love to each other. I decided in my heart to live with this kind-hearted man. However, his attitude completely changed right after the marriage. The loving man he used to be is long gone. My husband no longer sees me as a woman. Now, I'm treated just like a housekeeper. All you need to do is listen to me and stay quiet. That's his catchphrase. I wonder how long this life will continue. At that time, I had no way of knowing that a ray of light would shine on me. My name is Michelle Jenkins, I'm 28. I work as a secretary at my father's company while also being a housewife. The company, once managed by my grandfather, was taken over by my father 2 years ago. Being the daughter of a business owner, I've always been kept at a distance. The men who approach me are mostly after money. Of course, I've never really been in love. At one point, I stopped telling people about my family background. That's when I met the man who would become my husband, a man named David. I had asked my friend, who introduced us, to keep my status as the boss's daughter a secret. David doesn't gamble or smoke at all. He does drink, but never to excess. He was my ideal man. He would tell me he loved me, that he adored me. I thought I could spend the rest of my life with such a man. However, when I decided to marry David, my father said this. Michelle, it's fine if you marry him, but could you keep it a secret that you're the boss's daughter? Dad, how many times have I told you? He's a very good person. He's not after money at all. That may be true, but I don't want you to have a hard time because of that. But if a year passes after you're married and David is still the same, let's talk about the company together. You can apologize for keeping it a secret then.
All right. If you're that insistent, Dad, I'll do as you suggest.
I agreed reluctantly with my father's proposition. My father knew of my past heartaches with gold-digging men. And as an overprotective parent, he worried I might get hurt again. I decided I could share the truth with David after a year as per my father's advice. And until then, I would just be an ordinary secretary. And so, under these circumstances, David and I got married. Now, a year after our wedding, I still haven't revealed the truth to him. The reason is simple. He is no longer the kind man he used to be. As soon as we got married, his behavior became cold and distant. He would come home from work, already in a foul mood, and began to nitpick at the dinners I prepared.
Hamburgers for dinner, again? We're not children. Can't you think of anything else?
But, David, you used to love my burgers, didn't you? I've made them countless times before.
Don't talk back. You're always short on dishes. Besides the easy dishes like salad and soup, you should be able to make at least 5 other dishes.
5 dishes. That's a lot. I have work too, you know. I can't manage that much.
What? When I tell you to do something, you do it. I married you, so you should listen to what I say.
I'm sorry. The warmth and kindness he used to show were gone, replaced by a coldness as harsh as ice. At the time, I only thought he must have had a bad day, but his behavior started to get worse. By the time half a year of our marriage had passed, David had become a full-fledged tyrant. Not just about the cooking, he would complain about everything from the way I folded the laundry to how I cleaned the house. If I tried to protest even a bit, he would yell at me with a terrifying look on his face. Just being yelled at would have been bearable, but sometimes he would even throw the meals I made into the trash. A year after our wedding, his tyrannical behavior hasn't changed, and if anything, it's getting worse. Just the other day, I was delayed at work and didn't get home until after 7 p.m. As soon as I said, "I'm home," he started yelling.
You're late. What time do you think it is?
I'm sorry. Work just got a bit out of hand. I'll start on dinner right away.
Work got out of hand? A mere secretary like you don't have that much work to warrant staying late.
But I really did. I'm handling some accounting tasks too, so there's a lot to process.
Don't talk back to me. It's unthinkable for a woman to come home later than her husband. Next time, if you come back later than me, you're quitting your job.
That's not fair. From fear of David, I couldn't talk back. Looking back, I wonder if I should have left him sooner. But I was pushing against the worry of my parents when I married. I couldn't reveal the truth. I didn't want to sadden my mom and dad. So, I silently bore it all by myself. Then one day at work, during a break, my father called me into the reception room. I often went in and out of the reception room because I often assisted my father as his secretary. As I entered, my father was already inside. "What's up?" I asked. My father, looking pleased, replied,
It's been a year since you got married to David, right? I think it's about time you told him the truth as promised. Oh, yeah, we had that agreement.
"Is something wrong? You don't seem happy. Didn't you say that David wasn't after the money?"
Well, yes, but it's just, right now, it's a bit.
Seeing my troubled expression, my father smiled and tried to comfort me, patting my shoulder. "Did you have a fight with David?" "Well, you're both young and newlywed. I guess it's inevitable. My wife and I also had our fair share of arguments back in the day. But look at us now, still happily together. I'm sure you'll be okay, Michelle."
It's not exactly a fight. Don't worry, everything will be all right. I mean, every couple has their share of arguments, right?
Well, I suppose you're right.
Anything else bothering you?
No, nothing really. I'm okay. But I guess I want to wait for things to settle down a bit before I talk to him.
Haha. Well, don't let it get you down too much. A little marital spat is pretty common.
It seemed my father thought we were just having a minor argument. To avoid worrying my parents, I hadn't consulted them about my husband up until now. Because of this, my father seemed to believe things were going well between us.
Well, you better make up with David soon.
Saying that, my father left the room. Left alone in the room, I was choked with emotions I didn't know how to deal with. I had married David despite my parents' concerns. I absolutely couldn't tell my father about the deteriorating relationship between David and me. But, sooner or later, I'd have to talk about it or risk arousing suspicion. To prevent my father from becoming suspicious, I had to maintain my relationship with my husband somehow. And if possible, I wanted to steer our relationship in a positive direction. That night, I came home on time to talk with David, waiting for him to return. Just as I finished making dinner, he came home. I immediately broached the subject with him.
David, there's something I want to talk about.
Huh?
I'm tired, you know.
It's important.
Look, we're married, right? I want our relationship to be equal and enjoy our lives together every day.
Equal?
Ha! What are you talking about? There's no way you and I are equal.
My husband grabbed my hair, yanking it up harshly.
Ouch!
I couldn't help but cry out, but he didn't let go. As if mocking my wincing face, he slowly opened his mouth.
Listen well. I'm the one who did you the favor of marrying you. Be grateful that I deigned to marry a plain and useless woman like you. Did me the favor? David, didn't you say you loved me? Don't make me laugh. I just pretended to like you because you seemed obedient and would be a handy housekeeper. That's not true. You just need to be quiet and listen to me, housekeeper.
With these words, he yanked my hair towards his face. From that day on, I gave up hoping. There was no chance of us being equals. And I didn't want to worry my parents, nor could I get a divorce. My appetite dwindled day by day, and I ended up just living with my roommate, my husband. Then one day, while living such a life, I woke up feeling completely exhausted.
My head hurts, and I feel a chill.
When I took my temperature, it was a whopping 104 degrees Fahrenheit. I forced my aching body to sit up and called out to my husband.
David, I'm sorry. I don't think I can make breakfast today.
What? Why not?
I've got a fever of 104. I'm in so much pain. Can I just stay in bed for the day?
At this, my husband let out a long sigh and yelled.
Slacking off chores because of a stupid fever? Get to work, you good for nothing. But, please, forgive me. I'm really sick. Shut up! Stop making excuses! You're just a housemaid. Don't you dare defy your master. Please, just for today. I'm begging you.
He clicked his tongue loudly, swung the door open with a bang, and left the room. Next thing I knew, my hands were shaking, and my body was trembling uncontrollably. I finally realized just how close to the edge I was being pushed. If I continue like this, I'll break down for real. Continuing to live like this, it'll drive me mad, body and soul. I need to do something. But what can I do? I want to think of a way out, but my fever is making my head heavy, and I can't think straight. Maybe it was because I'd been on edge for so long, but I fell back asleep. Several hours later, I was awakened by my husband's raging voice.
Hey! Didn't I tell you to wake up, you dumb woman?
Ha! David. Outside the window, it was already dark. My fever had gone down a lot, but my body was still heavy, and a faint headache lingered. Despite my state, he vented his anger.
I called you multiple times. What are you doing sleeping?
Called.
I sent you a text saying, I'm bringing my boss home, prepare drinks and snacks, didn't I?
Wait a minute. You knew I was sick today, right? And yet, you brought your boss home.
I invited him to continue drinking at home. My promotion depends on this. Get up and get things ready, now.
No, I can't.
I'm still in my pajamas, and I'm not feeling well at all. Shut up! Just get out here now!
As he yanked me by the arm and forced me to stand in the kitchen, my husband then hurried back to his boss who was likely waiting at the entrance.
Sorry to keep you waiting. Please, come on in.
From the entrance, I could hear my husband speaking cheerily. Are you sure this is okay? This late? I'm sure your wife wouldn't appreciate.
That's what I've been saying. I don't have a wife, just a housemaid.
A housemaid.
Sort of like a maid wife, you could say. But please, don't mind.
As he said this, my husband led his boss into the living room. I was in my pajamas, without any makeup, so I bowed my head in embarrassment. Nice to meet you. My husband is always telling me about you. I apologize for my appearance. I'm the section chief, Mr. Smith. I'm sorry for intruding so suddenly. Please, don't mind me. I'll prepare something right away. As I returned to the kitchen, hiding my face, my husband let out a tirade.
Hey! Get a move on and make something. You're absolutely useless.
I'm sorry, just wait a little bit longer.
Instead of opening your mouth, move your hands. Despite the section chief taking the time to visit, how much more do you need to embarrass yourself before you're satisfied? Huh?
I'm sorry.
Sorry about this, Mr. Smith. Our maid is really quite useless.
The section chief sat quietly, his face slightly contorted. Even as I prepared and brought over the drinks and snacks, my husband kept making snide remarks like,
"You're really useless."
When my husband went to the bathroom, Section Chief Smith started to speak. Excuse me. There was no way I could ignore him. Although I was flustered, I responded.
Yes, is there something you need? You're the daughter of CEO Allen, aren't you?
My maiden name was Allen. He was referring to CEO Allen, my father.
What? How did you? I had previously visited your father's company regarding a business deal. You served me tea then, didn't you? Wait, you were, from that time?
I usually attended all interactions with our business partners. Each time, I served tea and was introduced as the daughter of Mr. Allen. And Smith, he was one of those people. I was informed that David's workplace had become a client of my father's company, but I had not yet told my father that David was working at Smith's company. While glancing towards the bathroom, Smith continued in a hushed tone. What's up with your husband's behavior? Is he always like this at home? Yes. I can't believe what you've been through. Why haven't you told Mr. Allen? That is. Regardless, we can't let this continue. Leave it to me. Smith, while looking at me straight in the eyes, quickly packed up his things and left. In that moment, I felt as if something that had been restraining me was slowly being untangled. I felt a profound relief, as if I had finally found an ally. On the other hand, when David returned from the bathroom, he was stunned to find that Smith had left.
Why didn't you stop him, you good for nothing?
Despite his shouting, I decided to trust in Smith's words and endure it. Several days later, I was summoned by my father and headed to the company's reception room. Upon entering, I found Smith and a pale-looking David.
What? Why is David here? And Smith, you're here too.
I was confused, unable to understand the situation. In the tense atmosphere, my father started speaking with a stern expression.
I heard from Smith. You've been treated horribly by David, haven't you? I understand. You're kind-hearted, and you wanted to avoid worrying me, didn't you?
Dad.
Thank you, Smith. Thanks to you, I was able to save my daughter.
At my father's words, Smith bowed his head. Immediately afterwards, my father shot a withering glare at the ashen-faced David and coldly stated,
David, I can't believe you turned out to be such a scumbag. I shouldn't have let you marry my daughter. Wait, please!
David pleaded, shaking visibly.
I had no idea you were the president of our business partner. I didn't know Michelle was a CEO's daughter. Shut up! So if you knew, you would have treated Michelle better. You're truly a lowlife. No, there's a reason for this. A reason. I'm going to report you to your company's CEO. I'm acquainted with him, and we have a long-standing relationship. No way.
David filled his eyes with tears and crumbled to his knees. Then he turned to me with pleading eyes.
Michelle, say something to your father for me. You want me to say something, huh?
I raised my voice to vent my pent-up frustrations.
Do you have any idea how much I've suffered because of your overbearing, chauvinistic attitude? I've been holding it in all this time.
I tried to improve our relationship. It's you who ruined everything, right? Treating me like a housemaid and constantly berating me. Do you know how humiliating that was? Wait, Michelle. Please forgive me. Shut up. Don't you dare casually call me by my name. No matter how much you apologize, I will never forgive you. I don't care if you fall into hardship, you get what you deserve. If you understand, never show up in front of me again. Stay out of my life forever.
At the end of my outburst, David started crying uncontrollably. Smith grabbed his arm, bowed, and left the reception room. Afterwards, David and I got divorced. When my father informed David's company's president about the incident, he lost his job as well. It seemed David had a poor attitude at work and was fired considering these factors. Because he was fired for a valid reason, he didn't get any severance pay. After the divorce, David apparently went back to his parents' house. However, his in-laws already knew about the incident. I heard his father gave him a stern scolding and kicked him out of the house. Now, he seems to be working day and night at a factory where he can live in. He probably doesn't have much of a cushion since he has to make alimony payments to me. On the other hand, after the divorce, I moved back to my parents' house. Now, I've completely recovered and am focusing on my job. Since then, I've been meeting Smith regularly and we have a good relationship. I'm not considering remarrying yet, but if I do someday, I want someone like him. When that time comes, I hope to build a happy family. You're in your mid-30s and you're still single? That's pretty sad. My husband is both handsome and a genius. Madison declares this with a sneer in the middle of the park, looking down on me with a smirk that seems to scream she's on the winning side. The crowd around us starts to murmur. Everyone looks at me with pity in their eyes. That must have been exactly what Madison wanted when she raised her voice. I've been subjected to Madison's cruelty before. I've managed to ignore it until now, but I can't take it anymore. I want to make her experience hell. The same, no, even worse hell than what I've been through. My name is Stella, a 36-year-old working mother. I'm a nurse, and despite the challenges, I find fulfillment in a job that allows me to help others. Welcome home, Stella. I'm back. You're home early today. The meeting I had planned got rescheduled to tomorrow, so I ended up having some free time. Waiting for you at home like this is quite nice. My husband, Stephen, is a calm and kind-hearted man. Like me, he's busy with work, but he always makes time for the family, and even after 13 years of marriage, I can feel his deep love for me. Mom, you're home. That's my son, Mark. He just started middle school this year and is 12 years old. He's still my adorable son, though he's starting to act a bit more grown up. I'm back. Oh, what's that wonderful smell? Today's my turn to cook dinner. It'll be ready soon. Mark has grown up to be a kind child, just like his dad. I could have never imagined my life to be like this 13 years ago. I'm always grateful to Stephen and Mark. One day, I found myself alone in a jewelry shop in Chinatown. I was there to get our wedding rings cleaned since they'd started to tarnish. I decided to go for the full restoration service, and they told me it would take about 2 to 3 weeks for the rings to be ready. After leaving my ring with them, I headed to the apparel shop next door. Stephen, knowing I don't often splurge on myself, had given me some money and said, "Buy yourself some clothes you like." While I was happily choosing clothes, someone called out to me. "Hey, aren't you Stella?" "Huh?" I turned around to see a short woman standing there. Her large, cat-like eyes and plump lips. Anyone would have called her cute at first glance, and her exaggerated head tilt was designed to charm. But that's all in the past now. As she's entered her late 30s, those gestures just seemed embarrassing. "It's been a while. Remember me? As if you could forget, right? After all that happened." But, seriously, Stella, still single? I noticed you're not wearing a ring.
The woman basking in her own chatter is Madison. My friend, or rather, my former friend. Madison and I met in high school. I was a member of the volunteer club. It was a club that visited preschools to read picture books, and we learned sign language to communicate with the hearing impaired. I've always found joy and purpose in making people smile and doing something beneficial for others. And Madison was also a member of this club. Why did you join the volunteer club, Madison?
Just because? It seemed fun. Like sign language in Braille.
Madison, with her cute looks and a charm akin to a small animal, was popular among the boys. Wow, Stella, you've already learned that much sign language. You're really talented.
Really? Thank you.
Madison often complimented me, which meant a lot since I didn't have much confidence in myself. She also gave me advice on love.
Hey, I'm going to start dating Brian. It's all thanks to you, Madison. Really? Congratulations.
Perhaps because of her popularity and continuous advice, I got a boyfriend for the first time in my life. His name was Brian. A senior in the top high school in the county, aiming for medical school, a true elite. Brian and I met at a cram school. We happened to be going the same way home, and after talking a few times, there was a mutual attraction, though he hadn't made a move. After consulting with Madison, she said, "You should be the one to go for it." So, I asked him out and we finally became a couple.
Madison, thank you so much.
No problem, we're best friends, right? We'll always be together. Our friendship came to an end when Madison stole my fiancé. After graduating high school, I went to nursing school and worked as a nurse at a hospital. Brian, having passed his medical licensing exams, proposed to me, and we got engaged. I was on top of the world. Then, I received a phone call. It was from Madison. After high school, Madison went to a distant university, got a job, and didn't return to our hometown. We only met once or twice a year. Madison mentioned she would be coming back home soon, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to introduce her to Brian, so the three of us planned to meet. On the day the three of us met, Madison's face lit up the moment she saw Brian.
Brian, you're so handsome. And such great taste in clothes, and plus you're a doctor too? Totally my dream guy.
Yes, but I still have a lot to learn. Smart and high-earning. Guess you're not short on cash, Stella. Share some with me, will you? What do you mean share? I found myself grateful for Madison's presence in my life, the only one with whom I could exchange such jokes. A month had passed by. Late at night, I got a call from Madison. Sorry, Stella.
For what?
Madison chuckled as if she was holding back a big secret. I only meant to take a little bit from you. But he was surprisingly easy to win over. So, I ended up taking everything, not just a little. It seems that during our meeting, Madison had secretly exchanged contact details with Brian. They met behind my back several times and eventually became romantically involved. Why? Why would you do that? We were. It's all a lie, obviously.
What?
You know, it was all calculated. I joined the volunteer club because I thought it would be full of nice, naive people, and yes, I hit the jackpot. There were so many people I could use. People who are too kind, can't judge others well, and share everything once they trust someone. Like you, Stella. Thanks to that, I knew everything about Brian, his likes, dislikes, personality, and even his taste in women. From there, it was an easy win for me. I'm way cuter than you, after all. You're lying, right? Madison? I never expected you to bring along such an impressive guy. Thanks, Stella. The call ended. Later, Brian officially called off our engagement, and the next year, he married Madison. Madison had a baby. That much was detailed in a letter she sent, making sure I knew. I moved far away, rented a house, and changed jobs to avoid any interaction with them. I hadn't met either of them since then. Brian's made quite the name for himself. He's working at a big hospital now, and we've moved. All thanks to you, Stella. Realizing that was her way of saying thanks for giving me Brian, I bit my lip. I don't dwell on the past. I put the clothes back and left the store. After returning home, I acted as if nothing had happened in front of my family and went to my bedroom, claiming I was tired. I never thought I'd run into Madison again. I was considering taking a nap until dinner to forget everything when my phone's notification sound went off. A friend request? It was from a social media account I had registered long ago and hadn't been using. Opening the app, I was surprised. A friend request from Madison. Why? Feeling there must be some intention behind it, I checked her profile and found a post from 10 minutes ago. Met Stella today. Really nostalgic. She's as plain as ever. But still my dear friend. Here's a photo of Stella picking out clothes. The photo showed me choosing clothes alone. She must have taken it before approaching me. The post had many comments. Wow, Stella really has no taste. Hasn't changed a bit since high school, so funny. Madison's so kind to help her choose. Unable to bear it any longer, I closed my phone. She must have sent the friend request just to show me this. Mocking me, exposing me in a public space. This was too cruel. How much more did she need to belittle me to be satisfied? A firm resolve for revenge began to stir within me. Today, I found myself back in Chinatown. A famous large department store had apparently opened nearby, and today, there was an opening sale with a 10% discount at all stores. Thanks to the sale, the department store was bustling with activity. After finishing my shopping, I was waiting on a bench in the plaza. That's when I heard a familiar voice. Hey, is that you, Stella? What's this? Did the poor thing get lured in by the sale? Madison. It was the opening day of the famous large department store. I had been wary, hoping not to run into Madison, yet here she was. I was just here waiting for my family. Never thought I'd run into you, Stella. That's right. I'm waiting for someone too. Oh, your family? But you're single, aren't you? Got dumped by someone, right? Hey, Brian. Brian was next to Madison, turning his face away from me, looking uncomfortable. Mom, is this the lady Dad dumped? She looks so plain and uncool. A girl who looked like she was in middle school laughed at me. Madison put her hand on the girl's shoulder, beaming proudly. This is Mia, my pride and joy. She's smart like Brian and goes to a prestigious middle school. She's super cute, right? She's an influencer with 10,000 followers on social media. We're like the successful mother-daughter duo. They both let out a vulgar laugh just as my son approached. Mom? Mark runs over to me. Seeing Madison's puzzled look, I said to her, "Let me introduce you. This is my son, Mark." Madison was taken aback. Huh? You have a kid? Well, he's got a plain face just like you. Then Nia tugged at Madison's arm. Wait, Mom, this is Mark. The super popular YouTuber with 500K subscribers. He's really smart and makes puzzle and quiz videos with his friends. And he's the current heartthrob.
He looks even more handsome in person. Wait, what? I'm Mia, an influencer. You know me, right? Can we exchange contacts?
Mia's eyes glistened as she gazed up at Mark, staring intently. Just like Madison used to. Mia? Never heard of you. Plus, I heard from a distance how you were mocking my mom. I don't like people who insult others' families. But...
Hey, why didn't you tell me, Mom? You got me dumped. It's your fault.
Mia,
I'm a big fan of his. I looked forward to his videos every day, solved puzzles, and always sent comments, hoping to meet him someday. Why is this happening to me? I hate you, Mom.
Mia, wait.
Don't touch me.
Mia shook off Madison's hand and ran away crying. Madison, visibly shaken, turned to me with a furious look.
So what if your son is whatever he says he is? Brian works at the top university hospital in this area. I taught him everything so he could advance his career. Even how to cover up little medical errors. I mean mistakes, you know. Hey, Madison, don't talk about that. You must be some miserable single mother, right? Not wearing a ring. Being single at 36, what a late bloomer. My husband is handsome and a genius,
Madison said with a sarcastic smile. Then Mark exclaimed,
Oh, Dad.
Hey, Mark. Stella. Stephen, having finished shopping, approached us. I smiled sweetly at Madison.
Let me introduce my husband as well. This is Stephen, a doctor at a nearby hospital. You know him, don't you, Madison?
Seeing Stephen, Madison looked like she was about to lose her mind.
Stephen? The genius doctor who became the deputy director of the university hospital at 38?
I nodded in response. Stephen and I met 13 years ago. After Madison stole Brian from me, I moved away to avoid them and started a new job at a different hospital. That's where I met Stephen. Back then, Stephen was a rookie doctor. He appreciated my diligent work ethic and the way I interacted with patients, deeply empathizing with my desire to help others, a sentiment I've held since my time in the volunteer club. We were naturally drawn to each other and eventually got married. And that's how Mark came into our lives.
Just how did you manage to marry someone so impressive, Stella? Did you use some dirty trick? Stop it, Madison.
What's it with you, Brian? Don't interfere.
I said stop it.
Brian slapped Madison with great force. She fell, holding her reddened cheek, trembling.
What is wrong with you?
Brian glared at Madison.
This man is my boss. Haven't I told you before? I work at the same university hospital as Dr. Stephen. You weren't listening because you were too obsessed with social media.
Brian deeply apologized to Stephen and me. I'm terribly sorry for my wife's insult. Madison, I'm truly sorry. Stephen looked down at Brian and growled. You were talking about medical errors earlier, weren't you?
That was just my wife's nonsense.
I recall there was a medical error at the hospital you used to work at. A nurse was accused, and she has always claimed her innocence. Yes, I think I'll have the hospital look into it again. My husband and my son both have good ears. I chuckled behind Stephen.
But...
Brian collapsed, as if his soul had been drained. Madison was frozen, her eyes wide. I slowly began to speak.
Madison, you thought I was single because I wasn't wearing a ring, but actually, it's currently being serviced.
I should have told you. I'm sorry.
Stella, you.
Madison was shaking,
her face flushed with anger. Then Steven tapped my shoulder. "Let's go home, Stella. We've finished shopping, and besides, today is our anniversary." "That's right. Didn't you book a restaurant?" "I'm starving, let's hurry." "Yes, let's." We left the plaza together, leaving Madison behind. Her voice of frustration echoed behind us. "What the? No. I won't accept this." I left the department store elegantly, hand in hand with my husband and son, with her voice as our background music. The dinner at the restaurant was wonderful. Celebrating our anniversary with my family, I couldn't help but feel incredibly fortunate. Yet, a bit of unease lingered. I checked my social media. Yes, it's about Madison. She might well concoct a story from today's events to mock me. I checked Madison's page. "Today was the best day. Was shopping at the department store and met that genius middle schooler, Mark. My daughter even got his autograph. I'm so lucky. Snapped a photo of Mark." There was a photo of Mark from behind. Likely, she took it as we were leaving the department store. I was dumbfounded by Madison's persistence to use whatever she could. I commented on Madison's post. "Delete that photo right now. And stop lying about getting an autograph." Then, a new post appeared. "Some people are getting jealous. It's terrible to accuse me of lying when I'm not." The comments were filled with support for Madison. It was the usual scenario. There was no other choice. I decided to take a final measure. Later, I received a notification on social media. It was a friend request notification. The name was Madison too. An apology, perhaps? Though I had no expectations, I accepted Madison's friend request. Immediately, a message arrived. "Stella, what have you done? My account got deleted because of you. What are you going to do about it?" What am I going to do? I've told you repeatedly to delete it, and you wouldn't listen. I simply told Mark the truth. I informed Mark about Madison's post. We couldn't let the unauthorized photo and lies go unchecked, especially since it was harmful to Mark. Mark took it seriously and posted a video warning. "Somebody's been posting my photos on social media, which were taken without permission. I didn't sign anything. Despite requests from me and through my parents for deletion, all were ignored. Taking photos without consent is a crime. Please stop doing this." Mark's fans quickly identified Madison's post, and after many reported it, her account was suspended. The friend request now was from Madison's new account. The 2 in the name likely meant it was her second account. She must have registered again with a new email, but her fixation towards social media was astonishing. "How much effort do you think I've put into my posts? Thinking of the text, selecting the photos. Then why not put that effort into your new account? Post the truth and use proper photos, and you won't have your account suspended again. Shut up. Don't tell me what to do. And don't message me again." She was the one who reached out to me in the first place. I sighed and put down my phone. Later on, Madison began posting on her new account. Madison posted about her glowing daily life, fun girls' nights out, and parties. The friends appearing in photos with Madison were always the same group, including some from the volunteer club. Then, I received another friend request. I was curious but recognized the name upon seeing it. It was Olivia from the volunteer club, a frequent presence in Madison's posts. I hadn't talked to her much, but I remembered her face and name. "Long time no see, Stella. It's been a while. How have you been?" "Yes, well, actually, I wanted to talk to you about something concerning Madison.
Do you have the time? Of course. What's up? Madison always posts these flashy pictures on social media, surrounded by lots of friends. But it's all a lie. Everyone's being blackmailed into participating. Madison would dine out, claiming she's introducing them to good places, and then make everyone pay for her share. I was speechless, finally understanding the reason why members of the volunteer club appeared in Madison's photos. Is that true? Yes. Remember when Madison was criticized for taking unauthorized photos? Right after that, she contacted me. I've been complying, but I'm lost about what to do next. That's why I reached out to you, Stella. I saw you commented on that controversial post, so I thought you might support me. I thought for a moment. You mentioned being blackmailed. What kind of leverage does she have? She claimed to have seen me verbally abusing other members back when we were in the volunteer club, even threatening to expose this to my family. But I have no recollection of such actions. She insists she has evidence, and it seems others are in a similar situation. I felt something was off about Madison's claims. I suggested to Olivia. Sounds like Madison's lying, as usual. She targets kind or vulnerable people. Why not subtly ask around? A week later, one by one, the friends started disappearing from Madison's posts. According to Olivia, when asked for details or to show proof regarding everyone's weaknesses, Madison couldn't provide any and brushed off the request. Seeing her reaction, friends, or rather, those who had been threatened by Madison, became convinced that the so-called weaknesses Madison mentioned didn't exist. The glamorous daily life previously depicted in Madison's posts disappeared, replaced by solitary visits to cafes and boasts about her latest brand purchases. The likes and comments on her posts dramatically decreased. It was likely all a setup from the start. While checking my phone after work, I received a message. I'll never forgive you. I wondered if Madison found out I had given advice. Or was it just her assumption? Either way, I didn't want to be involved anymore, so I didn't reply. A few days later, as I was unlocking my door after returning from work, someone grabbed my shoulder from behind. Turning around, I saw it was Madison. Madison? Why are you here? I hired a detective. I know your husband is off today and has been out with your son since this morning. Madison pushed her way into my house and began to yell as she entered. Brian is being interrogated by the police. And because of Mark's photo, even Mia has been avoiding me, and all my friends are gone. I'll end up all alone. You have to take responsibility. Responsibility? This is all your fault, isn't it? Brian going to the police is because you instructed him to cover up his mistakes, right? And Mia avoiding you is because of the wrong you did. The same with social media. Threatening people to pretend to be your friends. You're the cause of all this. I responded calmly. Perhaps the incident at the department store had cleared my heart, healing past wounds. I won't run away. I won't lose anymore. Wait a minute. When you got a boyfriend in high school, it was all thanks to me. Without my advice, you would have been ignored for life. Now, return the favor. Give back everything you took from me. You're the one who took everything, Madison. You betrayed me. There's no favor to return. If there's any grudge, it's already been paid back. You should experience the hell I was pushed into. As I refused, Madison began to cry, crouching down. You're so cruel. Please, we're best friends, right? Tell your husband that Brian is innocent. Make Mark tell Mia he doesn't hate him. Please, I beg you." Black tears streamed down Madison's cheeks, likely the result of her heavy eyeshadow and mascara dissolving in her tears. Madison's face was a mess. She continued to cry, covering her face with her hands as if she were playing the victim. During this, I quietly went to the bathroom and made a phone call to a certain place. After a while, the doorbell rang, and the door was opened from the outside.
What? What's this?
Madison shivered. "We received a report about this house." Yes, she forced her way in here. It was the police officer I had called. The officer knelt down to Madison's level.
"You're suspected of trespassing. We've also received several complaints about noise from the neighbors, so you'll need to come with us to the station."
The officers handcuffed Madison and led her to the police car. Of course, she resisted.
"No, I'm innocent. Somebody, anybody."
Madison was pushed into the police car and taken to the station. Stephen and Mark were surprised by the event but were more amazed that I had handled Madison calmly. They were relieved I was safe and hugged me, saying, "We're so glad." That night, Stephen and I were in the bedroom.
"Stella, I have some good news."
"Good news?"
"Madison's husband, well, my subordinate, seems to be under investigation for medical malpractice. Rumor has it he's almost certainly guilty."
"Is that so?" Madison had been malicious since high school, probably desperate to elevate Brian for her own gain and status. Eventually, Brian was arrested by the police. The scandal of a doctor blaming a nurse for his mistake was sensationalized in the media, exposing their wrongdoing. Madison was also arrested for instructing Brian to cover up the mistake. Both ended up in prison, together. The victim of the medical malpractice is preparing to sue, and it seems both Brian and Madison's lives are effectively over. That goes the same for their daughter Mia.
"Stella, isn't this dress nice?"
"I like it. It looks like it would suit Mom."
"Really? Let me see."
We were at an apparel shop, the three of us. The last time I came here alone, Madison interrupted me, and I ended up going home without buying anything. So, we decided to come back together. I tried on the dress that Stephen and Mark recommended.
Isn't it a bit plain?" "Not at all. It suits you." "Exactly, being plain doesn't mean it's bad. If it suits you, then it's all good."
I was happy to hear their words.
"Yes, you both are right.
I want to continue spending peaceful days with my family of 3.
She threw herself on me, and I just couldn't say no. I guess I'm just that popular. But man, young women are the best. Never thought she'd get pregnant so quickly though, but hey, we're still family, right? Not like I plan on taking her away from my son. But we'll probably end up living together, so I'm looking forward to what's lying ahead."
It took a moment to understand the words of Michael, my husband, talking on the phone with a friend. I didn't know what it was about, but the pale face of our son, Paul, in front of me gave it all away.
"What? You got to be kidding me. Does this mean what I think it means?"
Paul muttered, without seeking confirmation from anyone. I was left speechless by his words. But we couldn't continue living without knowing the truth. After learning everything, Paul plotted his revenge. I decided to fully support him in sending Michael straight to hell. I'm Sophia, currently 46 years old. Living with my husband Michael, our eldest son Paul, and our daughter Lily, it's the 4 of us. I'm currently working part-time in an administrative role at a local company. I've been working for this company since graduating high school, took a break for childbirth and raising my kids, but started working again once the kids didn't need as much attention. I have good relationships at work and a happy family life. It's a perfectly ordinary life, but I've come to feel it's the happiest thing at my age. If there's one complaint in my life, it would be about my husband, Michael. Michael is 50 this year. Unlike me, he's an active type who seeks excitement, always saying, "I'd suffocate staying at home all the time." He's always loved going out and has many hobbies. When the kids were little, he'd take them fishing, camping, hiking, and we even played golf together. Michael, always with the family, seemed like the ideal dad from the outside, and was even envied by others. But what's seen from the outside isn't everything. While curious, Michael also gets bored very easily. He's the type who starts by looking the part at anything he does. Expensive fishing rods, camping gear, golf equipment. Every new hobby meant spending hundreds of dollars on gear, only to stop using them after a few times. And they would never be used again.
Dad, I want to go fishing again. Dad, I want to go camping.
Even if the kids begged, once he got bored, he wouldn't listen to their requests.
What? I'm already done with that stuff.
With those words, it was over. He might have seemed like a good dad to others, but Michael was just doing what he wanted. The kids were not really joining him. He was dragging all of us along. Eventually, the kids realized that too.
All right, this summer vacation, let's all go get our diving license.
Eventually, when Michael would suggest something, no thanks. You'll just quit when it gets fun.
And getting gear for all four of us costs money, especially when we'll just stop using it soon anyway.
That's why we stopped going along with his suggestions. I think the kids have a point. I feel the same way. But Michael just gets mad at them.
What's the deal? I thought it'd be nice for us all to do something together.
He complains in such a way that you can't tell who's supposed to be the adult. When Lily, our youngest, became a middle schooler, Michael truly stopped getting any attention from the kids. But that didn't mean Michael calmed down. What he started next was gambling. Compared to his past hobbies, starting gambling didn't require much upfront money. And he'd probably get bored of it soon anyway. If he went alone on his days off without dragging the kids along, I actually found it convenient. I didn't know how long this new hobby would last, but I decided to just watch over it.
Sophia, listen, I won $1,000 today. Aren't I amazing?
Luckily, Michael never suffered major losses. Sometimes he'd win $1,000, other times $300, or even $50. The amounts varied, but it seemed he mostly won.
$1,000? That's incredible. Makes working feel stupid, right?
He'd joke about his hobby like that. But after getting hooked on gambling for about 6 months, Michael stopped talking about winning.
Lately, I haven't heard about any wins. Not going well?
If I asked, he'd brag, "Of course not. I'm a genius. I keep winning every time I go. It's just a hassle to report it. Plus, it's my pocket money." Well, I had my concerns, but he was serious about his job. As long as he was using his own spending money and kept it within reason, there wasn't much I could say. It's not like I wasn't worried, but nothing has lasted a year with him. I thought he'd get bored soon enough. However, contrary to my expectations, Michael didn't stop gambling. He even made friends, continuing to indulge in gambling every weekend a year later. As I was growing frustrated with such Michael, one day, something happened while I was shopping at the supermarket. When I tried to pay with the card for our living expenses, the clerk told me, "I'm sorry, but the payment isn't going through." Thinking the magnetic strip was damaged, I quickly pulled out my own card.
Sorry, can we use this one instead? and paid without issue. The card for living expenses was a family card issued in Michael's name, with withdrawals from his account. So, I had to talk to him about it that night.
The card didn't work at the supermarket today. Maybe the magnetic strip's bad? Can you handle the reissuing?
I handed the card to Michael. But days passed without any action from Michael. Suspecting something, I called the company, but they said they couldn't discuss it with anyone but Michael. While waiting for the reissue using my own card, I noticed a letter from the card company. Thinking Michael had taken care of it without telling me, I opened it, assuming it was the new card, without checking with Michael. But the contents of the letter shocked me.
Couldn't withdraw from the account? What does that mean?
It was a demand letter asking for a deposit into the account. The account was where Michael's salary was supposed to go. It was unthinkable that there wouldn't be enough for a withdrawal. I rushed to the bank to check the balance. To my horror, there was only $300 left. There were multiple withdrawals from the ATM using the card. No doubt about it. It was Michael's doing. Suppressing the rage that threatened to overwhelm me, I returned home. And that day, when Michael came home, I confronted him right away.
What were you thinking? What's this all of a sudden? Don't play dumb. There's hardly any balance left. How are we supposed to get by this month?
Michael laughed it off as if to dodge the question.
Just lost a bit, so I borrowed some. It's not like I touched the savings, so it shouldn't matter much, right?
And he had the nerve to say it so nonchalantly. I was furious with Michael's carefree attitude. It wasn't that the card was demagnetized. It was just disabled, which is why it couldn't be used. Michael knew that, so he didn't bother to get it reissued. Even if he had told me honestly, it wouldn't have been forgivable, but keeping silent and then trying to cover it up made me feel betrayed.
Please, no more gambling.
Saying that seemed to sour Michael's mood even further.
What's the big deal? I've been losing a bit these past few months, but overall, I'm still ahead, aren't I?
Quit while you're ahead then. He responded with a sullen face and childish retort, and I scolded him again. After that, Michael was unbearable.
What a boring family. Can't even do what I enjoy.
Muttering that, he treated me, who had banned gambling, like an enemy. But I couldn't just sit around and wait until the financial issues affected our lives. The kids were still students. Their education costs money. The relationship between us spouses deteriorated, and Michael probably got bored with our marriage, but divorce wasn't an easy option. Wanting to maintain a harmonious family until the kids were grown, I spent my days trying to appease Michael. Then a happy event occurred in our family. Paul, who had graduated high school and was working, got a girlfriend and introduced her to me. Her name is Mia. She's the same age as Paul, moved from the countryside to work here, and met him through a friend at work. It felt like a fresh breeze had blown into our family, and I welcomed Mia warmly. "Your mom's cooking is so delicious." Mia was a lovely girl. She always complimented our meals when we ate together. She even went cafe hopping with Lily, quickly becoming part of our family. Mia also took great care of Michael. Being his drinking buddy and listening to his stories, something only she did among us. Michael liked Mia too, saying, if Paul and Mia got married, and she became my daughter-in-law, that'd be great. Of course, I was all for the idea. Paul and Mia were still 20 but seemed to be thinking seriously about their future. Later, they decided to marry when they turned 23.
Why wait until 23?
I was simply curious. Paul explained.
Getting married costs money. I want to give Mia the wedding she dreams of, so we thought we'd save up together until then.
I was impressed by his mature thoughts for someone his age. Of course, We had enough savings to afford a wedding for them. But Paul didn't want to rely on us. Instead, he wanted to be the one to support us. I was moved to tears by his sentiment, even though the wedding was still far off. As a sign that Mia had already become part of our family, we decided to refer to her not just as Paul's girlfriend but as his fiancée. However, some time later, Paul told us that Mia was pregnant. I was surprised by the sudden news, especially since they had planned to marry at 23.
Pregnant? I don't mind, considering what you two feel,
I said to Paul, but his expression remained clouded.
Is something wrong? It's just... Mia shouldn't be pregnant.
Paul muttered uncomfortably in response to my question. I was puzzled by his statement. Paul added, as if to drive the point home.
There's no way I could be the father. I was away on a business trip when she would have gotten pregnant.
Paul's anguished cry pierced my heart. Mia had an affair? But she didn't seem like that kind of person. Paul continued.
But Mia insists she hasn't cheated. I just don't know what to do.
Paul was in despair. Seeing Paul like this, I wanted to talk to Mia and asked Paul if he could arrange a conversation for us. I decided to keep Michael in the dark until things were clearer. Given the delicate nature of the issue, I doubted Michael's involvement would help. But the truth came out in an unexpected way. One evening, Michael was unusually late to dinner.
Paul, can you call Dad?
I was busy and asked Paul to fetch Michael. Paul went to call him, but neither returned for a while.
What's going on?
Leaving Lily to finish dinner preparations, I headed to the bedroom. There, I found Paul standing outside the bedroom, pale as a ghost. What happened? Paul gestured for silence, placing his finger over his lips, and as I approached the bedroom door, I could hear Michael's voice.
Well, this secures our future.
He seemed to be on the phone. Michael's phone conversation was likely with one of the dubious friends he'd met through gambling. I looked at Paul's face. If it was just a phone call, he could have simply come back and said, "Dad was on the phone." But judging by his complexion, it was probably not just any call. That became clear with his next words.
She threw herself on me, and I just couldn't say no. I guess I'm just that popular. But man, young women are the best. Never thought she'd get pregnant so quickly though, but hey, we're still family, right? Not like I plan on taking her away from my son. But we'll probably end up living together, so I'm looking forward to what's lying ahead.
At first, I didn't understand, but Paul's pale face made me realize the gravity of the situation.
What? You got to be kidding me. Does this mean what I think it means?
Paul muttered, not seeking confirmation from anyone. I was left speechless by his words. Afterward, I took Paul and left the house. I couldn't let Michael and Paul meet. Lily looked puzzled, but I asked her to eat with Michael, and we went straight to Mia's place. Paul. Mom. Mia greeted us with a worried face. It seemed the pregnancy had caused a conflict between them. Feeling the tense atmosphere, I spoke up. Mia, I want to hear the truth. Who is the father of the child in your stomach? Then Mia started to cry. She seemed hesitant, but after I promised I won't get mad, no matter what, she slowly began to talk. Actually, it's Paul's dad. Despite my promise not to get angry, I felt a deep rage upon hearing who was involved. On one hand, I couldn't believe what my husband had done, and on the other, how Mia had agreed to it. But I was wrong. I heard Paul is infertile. And if we are going to have children, he would want someone who's related by blood. So Paul's dad suggested that he should be the father, since it wouldn't change the fact that we're family. Both Paul and I were speechless upon hearing this.
Of course, that was not true about Paul. Mia just kept crying. What a vile turn of events. Michael had seduced Mia, Paul's fiancée, under false pretenses. Mia was the primary victim in this situation. Any distrust I had towards Mia vanished immediately. It was clear she wasn't lying.
Because it's a delicate issue, we thought to keep it from Paul. Michael and I thought staying silent would keep everyone happy.
Hearing this, my anger towards Michael nearly exploded. Paul must have felt the same.
Unforgivable. That man alone, I will definitely send him down to hell.
I nodded in agreement with Paul's words and decided to fully support his plan to bring Michael down. But caring for Mia was our first priority. Both Paul and I apologized deeply to her. She told us not to worry about it, but this wasn't something an apology could fix.
I think there's no fault in the child. But please, give me some time to think about what to do.
Mia told us her thoughts. Of course, we respected her wishes and asked her to contact us immediately if she needed anything. With that, we left her place.
We're home.
Ah, you're late. Where were you?
Lily and I already ate.
When Paul and I returned home, Michael casually remarked as if nothing was wrong. Paul looked like he might attack Michael at any moment, but he restrained himself and put on a smile.
Just wanted to have a chat with Mom, you know. I felt sorry for you, being banned from gambling and all.
Paul said this with a smile as he approached Michael. Right? You understand, Paul? Can't live without a hobby. Well, I guess you're right. Paul got me thinking, and I've reconsidered. Just don't overspend, okay? Lily was the only one not in on our plan, so her indignation, what? Are you stupid? Only encouraged Michael further. If the whole family suggested it, he'd surely be suspicious.
Well, it's 3 against 1. Give it up, Lily. Finally, gambling is back on.
As expected, Michael was overjoyed and headed out to gamble the very next day. During his absence, we explained everything to Lily. Predictably, Lily showed more disgust towards Michael than anyone.
Unbelievable! I can't stand that he's our dad. Mia deserves so much better,
Lily said, crying. And from that day on, Lily joined the plan. The plan was simple. Just let Michael squander his money on gambling. Our family knows Michael's character better than anyone. He would surely start dipping into the living expenses quietly again. That's why I moved all the living expenses and savings to a different account. I thought it would take about 2 months before moving to the next phase of our plan, but Michael's spending was several times faster than expected. In just 3 weeks, he ran out of money and started tapping into the living expenses account, which quickly ran dry too.
What are you thinking? This is the second time, you know? With Lily's college fees coming up, what are you going to do?
I yelled at Michael. Michael pleaded desperately, I didn't think it would run out so quickly. I'll win it back soon, just lend me $200, no, $100 from the savings. Even though I anticipated this, my anger towards Michael, who had quickly spent all the money, was genuine, not just an act.
You haven't learned your lesson at all. What are you even thinking?
Tears of frustration and anger came to me, and even Michael seemed taken aback. Always thinking about yourself. I thought I could endure it until the kids were grown, but I can't take it anymore. I slammed the divorce papers down. Michael turned pale at the sight of them.
Aren't you overreacting? I was just kidding.
He tried to soothe me, but I had no sympathy for Michael.
Lily will be under my custody. This house is in your name, so I'll be leaving. Just calm down. It's just gambling. Just gambling?
That's just the last straw. I despise everything about you.
Michael seemed truly remorseful this time. But that level of remorse was far from sufficient. The divorce between me and Michael was just the first step of our plan. Michael was stubborn to the end, but to that, Paul said,
Dad, you said we were a boring family that wouldn't let you do what you wanted, remember?
Now you can do whatever you want. You're free.
That's true, I guess.
Tricked by Paul's encouragement, Michael signed the divorce papers. Upon learning about the separate account for living expenses during the property division, Michael was furious, but I had only safeguarded our money. He had no reason to be angry.
That money will also be split in half in the distribution of property,
he said arrogantly.
You're getting the house. If that's the case, sell the house, and we'll split that money too. Of course, I'm going to sell all the fishing rods, camping equipment, and anything else that might be worth something. But it's only natural, isn't?
Michael was at a loss for words. He didn't want to sell the house and, despite having no plans to use them, didn't want to part with his fishing rods either. In the end, I was able to receive all the savings. With that money, Lily and I started living in an apartment.
I'm an adult, so I'll stay here,
Paul said, seemingly content, but that was just for show. He stayed in the house to report to us how Michael was progressively falling into ruin. Michael's descent into hell was slow, like descending a staircase. Whether it was the stress of the divorce or the freedom of no one nagging him about gambling, he began visiting the gambling dens daily. It had been only on weekends before, but now, losing and coming home after work became his routine.
Hey Dad, welcome back.
Paul would greet him as if nothing was amiss.
I'm home. What am I having for dinner?
Nothing.
I just got back too. What are you eating then?
This?
It's the stew Mom made.
Paul would flaunt the food I prepared for him right in front of Michael, who ended up eating instant noodles. Michael's envious gaze at Paul's food.
Give me a bite.
After a while, Michael would always say this, and Paul would refuse with, no way. This exchange continued daily. Then, about a month later, while eating instant noodles, Michael asked Paul,
Paul, I'm sorry to ask, but could you chip in for the house expenses? What? You know, utilities and stuff cost money.
Michael seemed solemn, but Paul quickly caught on.
Ran out of money, haven't you?
No, it's not like that. Michael avoided eye contact as he spoke. Paul stood up, looking exasperated.
I've been contributing monthly. You've used that up too, haven't you? What? I can't give any more money. If you're still asking for money, then I'll leave.
Indeed, Paul had been contributing financially since he started working. Even after we left, he continued to deposit money into the living expenses account.
Right, I was wrong.
You can stay. Michael desperately tried to keep Paul from leaving. But Paul laughed and said,
But you know, I used to contribute because Mom did all the housework. Now that I think about it, you don't do anything, and I'm the one doing all the housework, right? So, it's only natural for you to cover the utility bills, and I shouldn't have to contribute at all, should I?
At those words, Michael had nothing to say. The house remained clean thanks to Paul. It must be difficult for him to even look at Michael, the person he despises the most. I admire Paul's determination to decisively push Michael further down.
Yeah, you're right.
Michael nodded, flustered, but Paul added,
Well, I'm leaving anyway.
Paul played Michael perfectly, inflicting sure damage while leaving him disoriented. Michael tried to stop him, but Paul shrugged him off and left him behind. What followed was predictable. Neighbors, unaware that I had left, began to contact me frequently.
The house looks neglected. Are you away? Michael seems really worn down. Is everything all right?
From the messages, I could easily imagine the kind of life Michael was leading. Furthermore, there were reports of scary people are visiting. Should I call the police? I seriously wondered what was going on, but it seems he has borrowed money from a loan shark. That means he really must have no money left. As expected, I received a call from Michael.
Sophia, help me. You're the only one I can turn to now.
The only thing Michael was capable of doing was begging for money. I had no intention of helping such a person, but I decided to get in touch. I have something to discuss with you. I'll come to the house tomorrow. Michael responded, I'll be waiting, to my message. The next day, I headed to the house. With Paul, Lily, Mia, and a man. 5 of us went to the house.
Oh, everyone came along. I've been waiting.
When we rang the doorbell, Michael greeted us with an unsettlingly wide smile. However, his smile vanished upon seeing the man.
May I ask who you are?
The man introduced himself. Nice to meet you. I'm Smith, a lawyer. I'm here to discuss the damages they've all suffered.
Damages?
Yes. The infidelity against Sophia, defamation of Paul, and sexual assault against Mia.
What?
Hearing these words, Michael let out a strange noise and turned pale, breaking out in a cold sweat. Let's talk inside. Actually, something urgent came up. I'm sorry, but I have to ask you guys to leave now. Noticing our gaze, Michael seemed to finally grasp the situation. In the next moment, he tried to flee.
Don't run!
Paul caught him and said,
I know everything you did. Act like an adult and take responsibility.
Subdued by Paul, Michael shrank back. Then it was the lawyer's turn. Michael, unable to argue against Smith's words, just nodded, watched by us with disdain. It goes without saying for Mia. Claiming Paul is infertile and telling his fiancé is defamation that could ruin her life. Please reflect on your actions. We then collectively demanded $100,000 in compensation. Smith explained to Michael the breakdown and its amount.
I can't possibly pay that.
Michael pleaded to Smith and the others. That's when Lily said,
Can't you cover that by selling this house? We're going to make sure you pay.
Michael has no money left. He's even resorted to borrowing. Selling the house seemed his only option. Michael's wailing and apologies were repulsive. But forgiveness was out of the question. Disgusting. Lily looked at Michael with disdain, as if looking at trash, and Paul also showed his disgust.
Just pay up. And don't ever come near us again. If you can't do that, we're prepared to take legal action over what happened to Mia.
We left Michael crying alone in the cluttered, filthy house and went home. Eventually, Michael sold the house. He used the money to pay us and to repay the loan shark, as Smith informed us. But now he had no home and no money to rent an apartment. No one was willing to help him. Not even his gambling friends seemed close enough to lend a hand. He's been living in an internet cafe, subsisting on his advance salary from work. How long can such a life last? It seems like he might end up homeless if this continues. We thought Paul's plan had brought Michael down, but on reflection, Michael seemed to have brought himself down. He will likely fade away, forgotten by our family, and end his life alone and unnoticed. Mia and Paul got married.
The child is innocent. I can't let Mia suffer anymore,
Paul declared, accepting Mia's child as his own. The amount of internal struggle he must have faced to make that decision. Mia, Lily, and I all cried, but Paul was the only one smiling. Mia gave birth to a healthy girl. Doesn't she look like Mom? Lily was the first to say so, seeing the resemblance to me. And Paul looks like me. If the baby looks like me then, and so we had a DNA test and it revealed the child was indeed Paul's. It seemed there had been a mix-up with the due dates. Mia, Lily, and I cried. But Paul, who had been holding back, cried the most. I'll make sure they're happy. Both Mia and this child. Paul made that promise. His next plan was truly wonderful. And I intend to support it fully. The older lady is fired. Clean everything up and leave. Carol, the president's daughter who became the head of the design department, said, I've been with this company for 40 years and have designed 90% of our flagship products, but she seems unaware of that. So, I decided to take action. I'll clean everything up nicely before leaving. I said, and then wiped all my PC data and resigned. As a result, Carol faced an unexpected turn of events. I'm Victoria Simmons, 62 years old. I work in the design department of a stationery manufacturer. I've been here since I was a fresh graduate, for 40 years, and I'm still active even after retirement age. I strive not to be outdone by the younger ones. I lost my husband 10 years ago, and my daughter lives alone. It's hard to say this about myself, but I've designed 90% of the company's flagship products. Therefore, I believe I hold significant value to the company. Stationery is wonderful. It's about dreams. Designing for writing, drawing, painting, erasing, measuring, making each task functional and enjoyable. These designs cater to everyone, from school children to professionals. How long I can continue, no one knows. But since I love my job, I joke with the younger employees that I'll keep going until I can no longer stand. One morning, the President Kennedy, who I joined the company with, showed up at a meeting. It had been a while since he attended. He brought a woman with him. Good morning, everyone. It's been half a year since I last saw all of you, hasn't it? Victoria, you're looking well. Kennedy and I joined the company in the same year. He used to be in sales, and we often talked at internal product presentations. Unlike the typical arrogant son of a president, he's sincere and humble. It's been 10 years since he took over from the previous president. Today, I've brought the replacement for the department head who recently left. Kennedy encouraged the woman beside him to greet everyone. She stepped forward and greeted. Hello, I'm Carol Kennedy. I look forward to dedicating myself to the future growth of our company. Please, let's work well together. Everyone in the department was surprised. No one had expected the president's daughter to be appointed as the head of the department. As you all may know, our company is planning to expand overseas starting this year. We sent Carol to study abroad for a long time for this reason. She will help us create designs that are globally competitive. Let's all unite in this effort. After saying so, Kennedy left in good spirits. Wilson, one of the colleagues, approached me. Victoria, what do you think about her? Carol, I mean. I've known Carol since she was a child. We've never spoken, but the president used to bring her to company recreation events. Haven't seen her in a long time, but she's grown into a fine young lady. I think the president wants to make use of her international experience. But whether she understands the design industry is another question. So, we'll see how she does, huh? I could sense a hint of disdain for Carol in Wilson's expression. Wilson, we just need to focus on our responsibilities. Yes, you're right. I'm sorry. However, as it turned out later, Wilson's intuition was spot on. A month had passed since Carol took charge. We continued as usual, brainstorming new ideas for stationery and designing in front of our computers. Everyone, I have something to say. Is that okay? Carol said so and walked to the center of the room. She then started speaking. We will start developing products for the international market next month, starting with UK. If things go well, we will establish a base in London and then expand to hub offices in various locations. Wilson's eyes widened. So, as a start, we will develop new products. The ideas and designs will be decided through an internal competition.
The strategy was to sell some of our existing products while simultaneously developing new ones. The release of the new products, both domestically and internationally. It was set for 6 months later. I had a question. Carol, is there a specific concept for the product development? Her face, which had been amiable until then, hardened.
The fact that I didn't mention a concept means it's the same as before. Simmons, you're our most veteran employee, right? I didn't expect such a basic question from someone like you.
I was taken aback by her unexpected response.
If I had to say, I don't want anything outdated.
With a composed face, Carol finished speaking and returned to her desk. The internal competition was held weekly. I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if, like Hollywood movies, American origin stationery could become popular worldwide? I kept searching for new product ideas. What's different from my younger days is that the number of ideas that come to mind decreases with age. However, the quality of each idea has certainly improved. So, I wasn't worried even if I didn't come up with ideas every week. But Carol seemed not to tolerate that.
In this past month, everyone has worked hard. We've had over 200 ideas, with Wilson contributing 20%. It's not just about quantity, especially since we don't know what the market expects. We need as many ideas as possible.
She was clearly speaking with me in mind. Unfazed, I gave Wilson, who was modestly giving a thumbs up, a secret wink.
Well, it can't be helped if nothing comes up. But, as professionals, is it acceptable? Only 5 ideas in a month might indicate you've run out of ideas after being in the business for so long. I don't understand that world, but it doesn't seem like you're trying.
She looked straight at me, without averting her eyes even once. After the meeting, Wilson came to me.
Thanks to you, Victoria. Your way of expanding associations was amazing. Ideas just keep coming. But Carol is too blatant. It's really annoying. It's okay. It's true that not many ideas are coming out.
But, has she seen your ideas? Just talking numbers here. 1 of yours equals 10 of ours. Does she understand that?
That's all right. Maybe the British won't like my ideas. The final judgment is by the users.
Another month passed. We narrowed down our ideas and designed about 50 specific products from them. None of my ideas were selected, but about 5 of my designs were nominated. Carol seemed displeased by that.
Today, a buyer from UK, Mr. Lee, will visit us. He's agreed to take over our agency there. We hope to decide today, but at least we want to narrow it down to about 5. Especially the younger ones, look forward to it.
In the afternoon, Lee arrived and headed to the conference room with Carol. They returned after about 3 hours.
Congratulations, Wilson. I think it will be one of your 3 designs.
Carol spoke to Wilson with a big smile. He looked surprised. Later, I heard that everyone thought one of my designs would be chosen. Thank you. But, are you sure? Shouldn't it be Victoria's?
That's fine. Mr. Lee liked it, and so did I.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much.
Indeed, we can't match the sensibilities of the younger generation. Simmons, it's unfortunate, but that's how it is.
Carol said that with a spiteful look. That might be true. I have no hard feelings about Wilson being chosen. In fact, I'm genuinely happy for him. It's wonderful when my colleague makes their mark in the world. I spoke from the heart. Then, Carol's face flushed with anger.
That's so irritating. What's with this saintly act of yours? You can only come up with 4 or 5 ideas a month and still act so high and mighty. Do you think everyone respects you just because you've been here the longest?
Her words were unexpected. I never thought she saw me that way, but at the same time, my anger was ignited.
Excuse me, but how much do you actually know about design? Do you remember the process of selecting everyone's ideas and designs? None of the works you favored are left in the final selection. You lack a professional's eye. You don't understand our struggle.
At that point, she lost her composure. Oh dear. To think you'd say such things to me. I'm a manager, you know?
She approached me, her eyes bloodshot.
You're done here as of today. The older lady is fired. Clean everything up and leave.
I was surprised by her sudden change, but I felt no resistance to her command to leave. Though I thought her remark about being an older lady was uncalled for.
I understand. I'll clean everything up nicely before leaving. But I'm worried about what happens next. What are you talking about? Worrying about what happens after you leave? Don't pretend to care. The department will rejuvenate, and the young energy will keep coming. It's all good.
She laughed triumphantly, looking as if her anger had subsided.
I'm relieved to hear that. I'll start right away,
I said emotionlessly and began clearing my belongings. There was nothing particularly important to keep or hand over, so I discarded almost everything. I saved my designs on my memory stick, wiped the PC data, yes, erased everything. I also cleared the shared memory on the internet.
Hey, Simmons, don't forget to submit your resignation. It's the rule.
Of course. After saying that, I immediately wrote my resignation letter and handed it to her. She remarked,
"Wow, that was quick,"
and took it with a refreshing smile. I tried to appear relieved, but I couldn't tell how she perceived it. Then, until the end of the day, I went around bidding farewell to my colleagues. That night, they hastily organized a farewell party for me. Surprisingly, it turned into a chorus of criticism and complaints about Carol. I became increasingly worried about the future of the design department. The next morning, I woke up to bright sunlight. It seemed I had gotten drunk last night, for the first time in many years, so much so that I couldn't remember when last I had felt this way. I had forgotten to close the curtains on the east-facing window and slept through. Suffering from a rare hangover, I groaned while heading to the kitchen. I grabbed a bottle of water from the fridge and gulped it down. Then, I sat on the living room sofa, feeling blank. My mind was empty, but that was a sensation I hadn't felt since my student days, which strangely made me a bit happy. However, old habits die hard. Despite not feeling hungry, I thought I should make breakfast.
Take it easy, you have all the time now,
I said to myself and chuckled. Then I thought of calling my daughter and visiting her.
Right, I should do what I've always wanted to do,
I muttered. Just then, my mobile phone rang. It was Kennedy. Good morning, Mr. Kennedy. What's the matter? Calling so early.
It's not about what's the matter, Victoria. I tried calling you last night too. Never mind that. Could you come to the office, please?
But I resigned as of yesterday.
Just come, please. This is an order. I'll be in my office.
All right. An order, that's not something one says to someone who has resigned. Yet, I thought, if he's insisting so much, it must be something urgent. I soothed my aching head with hot coffee, gulping it down as it cooled. Then, I called a taxi and headed to the office. Excuse me. I knocked and entered the president's office.
Good morning. Sorry for calling you in so early.
Kennedy wanted to hear about what happened yesterday. I explained everything, careful not to exaggerate my words or reactions.
I see. I am very sorry about that.
He expressed his deep apology.
The mess my foolish daughter made is my responsibility as her father. It seems I made mistakes in raising her. Victoria, would you consider withdrawing your resignation? We started here together, after all. Please.
I had harbored no negative feelings towards him, only gratitude for employing me for a long time. But his words caught me off guard. President Kennedy, it's not fair using our shared past like that.
So, will you?
All right. I'm counting on you.
Morning.
Saying that, he entered the design department office. I was told to wait in the hallway until called. The door was left open, so I could hear the conversation inside.
Dad, what are you doing here? Did we have a plan? Do not call me Dad here.
His uncharacteristically stern tone seemed to surprise Carol.
I have a question for you, Carol.
What is it?
The two began to speak in a formal tone.
Why did Victoria resign?
Oh, as per her resignation letter. Personal reasons.
Don't lie.
Kennedy glared at Carol as he spoke in a low voice.
It's not a lie. She left because of her age.
The surrounding staff were all left speechless.
Don't lie. I've heard everything about what happened.
In that instant, Carol glanced sharply at the employees.
Someone spilled the beans.
And muttered under her breath. Suddenly, Kennedy raised his voice.
Don't make a fool of me.
Carol stood up, startled, her eyes wide open.
Victoria.
I was called and immediately entered the room. Carol's eyes were so wide open, it seemed they might fall out.
Carol, I heard it from Victoria. You don't seem to understand what you did.
She seemed to have calmed down a bit. Even so, she took a deep breath before proceeding.
How do I know if her story is true? Fool!
Carol collapsed to the floor.
Who do you think you are? Don't underestimate the real world. Listen, you don't understand Victoria's value to our company at all.
The conversation had turned into one between parent and child.
It's not just about how long she has worked,
Carol said defiantly. Kennedy was completely exasperated.
How dare you? Victoria has been faithfully serving for 40 years, designing 90% of our flagship products. She's the backbone of our company. Without her, the design department would fall apart. She's irreplaceable. You, on the other hand, are easily replaceable. Understand?
Carol was at a loss for words, but she bit her lip and glared at Kennedy.
Then you should have told me that. How am I supposed to know if no one tells me?
She spoke like a petulant child, and laughter could be heard from the staff. Carol glared at them. Seeing that, Kennedy turned towards the staff.
Everyone, I am truly sorry. This incident is my responsibility as her father. That's right, I never wanted to be in this department in the first place. Dad is to blame.
I thought my blood vessels might burst.
You are unbelievably hopeless.
Kennedy and Carol both looked surprised, caught off guard. I had made up my mind. Carol, let me be clear. You are not cut out for a managerial role. In fact, you have a fatal flaw as a professional. Your conversation with President Kennedy just now proves it. You may have forgotten, but you called me an older lady. And as I've said before, your judgment in design is non-existent. It's hopeless. Carol was still in shock. I've changed my mind and decided to come back to work, for the sake of the president and the design department. I've chosen to cherish my passion. I then said to Kennedy, I'm sorry for my outburst. He shook his head and replied,
Not at all. Thank you.
Carol was biting her lip in frustration again, this time looking down. Then, a phone call came. It was for Carol, but after a moment of hesitation, Kennedy answered it. The caller was Lee. Kennedy listened, nodding and showing surprise at times, and eventually said,
That's fine. I apologize for the inconvenience. We look forward to continued cooperation.
He hung up. It was about the selection of the design. Lee said that although my design was his top choice, he reluctantly went with Wilson's due to Carol's strong insistence and persuasion. He found it hard to discard my design and thus reached out. It seemed that Carol had come to terms with the situation. She finally seemed to surrender. She dropped like a wilting sunflower. After Lee's call, Kennedy laid out the conditions to Carol in front of the staff.
You will decide your own future. If you want to work in our company, start from the new employee training. Otherwise, you'll be assigned to one of our client companies.
Greatly humbled, Carol replied in a faint voice, Yes. After the two left, all the staff gathered around me, expressing their joy. Although it was the unfortunate outcome for Wilson, see, I told you. This is for the best. He said with a smile. Indeed, it seemed like things turned out just as he and everyone else had initially felt about Carol. That experience reminded me of how important intuition is for a designer. Subsequently, our market expansion into the UK went well.
This time, we targeted teenagers. We found that the sensibilities of American and British teenagers are quite similar. While I don't think it applies to all age groups, it was a revelation. Considering the global use of social media, it's clear that sharing of sensibilities is happening faster than imagined. So, I believe that designs aimed at American consumers could also sell well. At my age, I never thought I'd be doing work with such a worldwide impact. I'm more motivated than ever. Visiting my daughter will have to wait. I guess it'll be another video call tonight.
The idea of caring for an old woman or dealing with high school kids, what a nuisance. There's no room for a baby here, right? You should leave. I was a teenager, jerked around by my selfish brother and his wife. But, in an unexpected turn, my life changed for the better. My name is Riley. Lately, at 40, it seems like gravity's winning the battle, my cheeks sagging into a slight bulldog look. Oh dear. Is it hard to be against aging? However, reminds me, my mother never really had sagging skin or wrinkles. Wish I had inherited that. I think she was quite beautiful. After divorcing my father over his affair when I was young, she raised my older brother Alexander and me on her own, until one day. Suddenly, she collapsed with a brain disease. Alexander was a freshman in high school, and I was in middle school. My mother woke up, but was paralyzed from the waist down and struggled to speak. She mostly seemed lost in a daze. That's when my trials began. After learning about her condition, what are we going to do now? Alexander quickly said. I thought, we'll support her together. But, Alexander said, I can't handle caregiving. Mom wouldn't want a man taking care of her, right? I have to study, so you handle it all. And he just dumped it all on me. As a middle schooler, I had no idea how to care for someone. I couldn't even imagine the workload or how hard it would be, just felt anxious about the future. Could I really take care of her all by myself? Not long ago, I was just a kid, spoiled by her. The only adult I could turn to was my father, who had abandoned us, and I didn't even know how to reach him. I learned for the first time that she hadn't even received child support from her husband. Even if I could contact him, he would have probably abandoned us again. Knowing the hardships she faced working day and night pained me. Moreover, she was young and ineligible for care insurance, so we couldn't get proper care services. Though we managed living expenses with welfare, there was hardly any external support. There might have been better systems in place, but as a middle schooler, I couldn't understand the bureaucratic paperwork. I just followed what the hospital advised, processing paperwork as told. Yet, Alexander turned a blind eye to me, leaving not only mother's care but all household chores to me. Living in the same house, he enjoyed leisure, sleeping whenever he wanted, while I gave up studying hard and friendships, often sleepless due to caring for my mother. Thus, my teenage years dedicated to household chores and caring for her, I was thrust upon me by Alexander. It happened the year after my mother fell ill. Suddenly, I'm dropping out of high school. Alexander announced. I couldn't help but hope he might assist with the mother's care. I was in my second year of middle school, needed study harder. I needed help, but what he said next was unbelievable. Got a girl pregnant. I'm marrying her and we'll live here. What? Turns out, he had impregnated a classmate. Dropping out to raise the child in our home. A person who wouldn't even care for his own mother, how could he care for a baby? A child making a child, that's what it seemed like. I protested loudly. I don't want to live with you. But, don't worry, I won't bother you. He just laughed it off with a nonchalant attitude. Of course, I couldn't believe those words. For the first time, I wanted to escape. But back then, I was powerless. A month later, Alexander's girlfriend, Stella, moved in. At first, I know it's tough at home. I'll help. She was saying nice things to me, but as expected, within 3 days, I can't strain myself because of the baby. She had me fetching even a cup of coffee. It's no surprise, considering she chose to be Alexander's wife. The high school dropouts stayed home mostly, doing nothing for my mother.
when I rushed home to care for her. "What's for dinner?" That's how they would ask me. Moreover, at night, they'd make noise, robbing me of my precious sleep. It's no wonder I lost 10 pounds after Stella arrived. Eventually, Alexander started working part-time at a grocery store, reducing their late-night disturbances, but then Stella's baby was born. Now, it was the baby's cries all night. Honestly, even being told she was my niece, I couldn't find her cute, given my feelings towards Alexander and Stella. I might sound cold, but back then, I was struggling with my studies, trying not to take out my frustration on my mother. I was still a child, with no capacity to adore Alexander's child. Despite being on the edge, I managed to get into high school, thanks to my teacher's extra help. Not the school I wanted, but the closest one with lower standards though. Not ideal, but better than not going at all. The money saved from Alexander dropping out of high school was used for my tuition. Maybe that's one thing to thank him for. I believed things would get easier once I started high school. That's what I hoped. Then, right before starting high school, one day, "Hey, Riley, how about this place?" "Huh?" Stella showed me a pamphlet for a condominium. I thought for a moment they were moving out now that they had a child. However, it was all for single living. "This one's close to a grocery store, good for a girl like you, near a busy street, safer." "Stella, I don't plan on moving." "Huh?" She asked back with a smile, but her eyes weren't laughing. I felt pressured, as if I had no choice. But, okay, I understand. I couldn't just say, "We should consider my mother." "Just take her with you." "That's impossible. I have nowhere to go." "I'm helping you look for a place. Just find a part-time job or something." "That's terrible." "Terrible? You're in high school now, perfectly able to work. Living at home is just pampering yourself, pampering. You're in high school, time to move out." "Why do I have to listen to you?" I argued back, tears in my eyes. "I am Alexander's wife. I'm his family. I've got a baby, but I've got an old woman to care for and a high schooler at the same time. How could you deal with harsh situation? Get out quickly." Before I knew it, Stella grabbed my collar and threw me out. Then Alexander roughly dragged my mother out, "Here," handing her to me. I couldn't believe these were the actions of parents. Stella then kicked my mother's wheelchair and threw my school bag at me. "See ya," and closed the door. "Wait! Please wait!" I yelled, banging on the door, but they didn't come out. I was really being thrown out. That's when I realized. "What's the matter, young lady?" The voice came from Harris, the old man living across the street. "Mr. Harris." He asked what happened. "I've been thrown out with my disabled mother." But I couldn't said. It felt embarrassing, somehow shameful. "Come on in for some coffee." He then gestured for me to come over with a smile. Though I was hesitant to enter a neighbor's home so quickly, it started raining, and I couldn't leave my mother out, so I gratefully accepted. Harris gave us towels and warm coffee. Noticing my tension, he made small talk, asking about my favorite things to help me relax. Eventually, "I was kicked out by Alexander and his wife." I opened up. "What will you do now? Do you have somewhere to go?" "I don't know." "How about I offer you a place to live?" "No, we can't. We don't have the money." "Oh my. I wouldn't take money from a young lady like you. It's for free." "That can't be right." "It's okay. Usually, old folks have extra money, and young people should take advantage when they can. I'll even cover your tuition. We can hire someone to care for your mother." "Why would you do for us?" "Don't you remember?" "Remember what?" "I used to be the janitor at your elementary school." "I'm sorry, I don't remember." "No wonder. You were only in 2nd grade, and I didn't have gray hair then. You found me behind the school suffering from chest pain and called for help." Now that he mentioned it, I vaguely remembered. "After that, I quit and moved here and realized you were my neighbor." But, just for that, you can't possibly owe me this much. No, you see, if you hadn't found me quickly, I could have ended up like your mother. I'm really grateful.
I couldn't believe it, but Mr. Harris's eyes weren't deceitful like Alexander's. He genuinely seemed to care about us.
You might be wary of a stranger offering you a home. So how about living with my granddaughter? She's in college and studying to be a caregiver. She could help.
That sounded reassuring. I didn't want to live with anyone like Alexander again. It was a tough decision, but honestly, I had no other choice. I decided to trust Harris and accept his offer. The house he provided was a mansion, the likes of which I'd never seen, and it was wheelchair accessible. His granddaughter, Scarlett, said, "I was planning to live alone for college but thought it might be lonely." She happily agreed to live with us and even shared the caregiving and household chores. I couldn't help but think, have I come to heaven? It was such a blissful life. Not only did Harris make it possible for me to attend high school, but he also offered to pay for my college, allowing me to pursue an education I thought was impossible. Scarlett was truly like a sister to me, supporting me through my studies. She helped me study for college because I hardly could have attended the high school class. Thanks to her, I was accepted into a university with much higher standards. Later, I learned Harris was from a family that owned a large corporation, involved in everything from food to caregiving services. He had been a janitor as a post-retirement hobby. One day, "How can I repay you?" I asked him. Then,
"Why don't you work at one of our caregiving companies?"
he suggested. It didn't feel like repaying him, but he said,
"Seeing you work hard would be the best repayment for me."
So, I accepted the job at his company. Thanks to my job, I was able to earn enough to afford outside care for my mother and live in a wheelchair-friendly house. Furthermore, Harris said,
"I want you to meet my grandson, Lucas."
He introduced me to Lucas, who was set to eventually take over the caregiving business I worked at. Initially, I hadn't planned on it, but I was drawn to him, a year older than me, and his inclusive nature. We started dating and eventually married. Harris confessed,
"I had planned for you two to get together from the start."
He said that when we announced our marriage,
"Now we're truly family,"
he said with a twinkle in his eye, though I was not fortunate with my real family, aside from my mother. I remember being happy to have found a family in that way. My understanding husband agreed to live with my mother. My in-laws were very kind, and we were blessed with 2 children, leading a peaceful life, until one day.
"Riley, isn't this your brother?"
"What?" Lucas handed me a resume, and there he was, aged but unmistakably Alexander. "It is Alexander."
"He's applied for a caregiving position at one of our homes. He's got an interview next week, among other candidates."
Caregiving. He would never do that.
I wonder how he ended up applying here.
I don't know. Hey, what if I conduct the interview? He grinned at my suggestion.
"That's a great idea."
He said that. On the day of the interview, Alexander appeared in a suit, but his shirt was wrinkled and untucked. He didn't look like someone ready to work.
"Please, take a seat."
He complied, and our eyes met for a moment.
"Riley! Long time no see."
I smiled, speaking to my startled brother. "Why are you here?"
"I'm the interviewer." "Why are you here?" "I thought you despised caregiving."
"I love caring for the elderly, you know."
"Lies. After what you did to my mother and me."
"I was young."
"Please, Riley!"
He whispered, but then suddenly shouted to beg.
"What's all about?" "I've got no other choice. Please hire me."
"What do you mean?" He exploded with emotion.
"I've been unemployed since my part-time factory job in my 30s. Stella says she can't support someone who only eats and does nothing. She started despising me when our child began daycare. I think she's seeing someone else. But she's all I have. If I don't get a job, she'll leave me for good."
Alexander, a grown man, broke down and cried right there, seemingly seeking pity.
I won't let him forget what he did to us. That's all? Surprised by my response, he said, "How can you be so cold after hearing my misfortune? I was just a student when you and your family threw me out. I managed with minimal welfare while taking care of you all." That's different. Maybe you were fired because you're the kind of person who easily abandons family. Perhaps you lacked something essential for the job. Silenced by my words, he just trembled. Did you ever help with the kids or housework? Or were you just lazing around? He seemed shocked, probably because I hit the nail on the head. No wonder you're not treated like a human. You're like a walrus, just eating and lying around. Walruses are cute, but a husband like that is just annoying. Stella probably didn't find another man, she just grew to dislike you. And I can see why from this conversation. He had nothing to say, just shaking. Sorry, but a company can't hire someone who'd kick out your own mother and sister. We're not that desperate. What? You're not getting it? You're not hired. No one with 15 job changes like yours could be natural. His resume showed short stints at each job. Likely due to being fired. He's always been self-centered, unfit for teamwork or considerate work. Indeed, even during this interview, his selfishness was evident. I mean, I only have caregiving jobs left. Thought so. Don't worry, I'll spread the word in our affiliates not to hire you. With a smile, I said, "Please, do not such a thing." And Alexander apologized again. That's non-negotiable for the elderly's safety. And, actually, I'm not really an interviewer. The real interviews ended long ago, and we've already chosen someone. You were never going to be hired. I just gave you a fake schedule. So, no matter what, you won't be hired. Sorry about that. I grabbed his collar and threw him out like he once did to me. Goodbye. And with a smile, I waved goodbye. He tried to re-enter the room, but Luca's subordinate, who was standing by outside, threatened, "If you make any more noise, I'll call the police." And they escorted him out of the building. That was the last battle with Alexander. Afterward, he sent a letter to my company. He couldn't find work and was divorced by Stella. The letter begged for help and a job. Typical of his self-centeredness. I ignored it. He doesn't deserve help after trampling on my mother and me. I hope he learns from being on the receiving end of hardship. Meanwhile, I continue to live a peaceful life. All thanks to Harris, who took in my mother and me. He is aging, his legs growing weaker, but I still visit him regularly. My middle school children also adore him, often visiting him on their own without my knowledge. This spring, we took my mother and Harris for a picnic at a nearby lake. We're planning a summer trip. Next year, and the year after, I want to create many more wonderful memories, making up for my difficult childhood. Despite those hardships, I'm glad to have been born. I'm grateful for meeting those people. I am happy now.